We've just had the first major tournament of Season 3, the Division Cup Finals. So in this video, I'm going to cover how the pros play the new map, how they're using the new dropping tech, the best weapons they're all carrying, and of course, the new fighting meta. So let's start off with where the best and worst teams landed. And what you're looking at here is where the bottom 5 players placed from every single region. One of the main trends you'll probably notice is the fact that most of these are not POIs. So a lot of these are just splits that get contested. And that is because a lot of the times the weaker teams will not be able to claim a POI, of course. The other thing is latte landing clearly is a little bit cheeks, as there was 3 teams in the bottom 5 that landed here and no one in the top 5 of any region that landed here. And the same thing can be said about this little East Island as well. Now things change up a lot when you look at the top 5 teams, as these are way more clustered. Unsurprisingly, the best POIs have some of the best performances. The Battlewoods had a lot of players in the top 5, which is unsurprising because it's the most loot and the most fishing spots, which you can fish up by using the Chaos Exploder Rifle or EMPs. Calamari Canyon, which had 4 teams in the top 5 across all regions. The main benefit of this drop spot is that even if you play max distance second zone, it's never going to be in the storm. So you can do what Teeny and Shark were doing and just loot very quickly and then just run in W key a team, get back here, grab more loot, and in that time they're not in the storm at all, so they have a lot of options on how they want to play the mid game. Then Lifty Lodge also had a lot of the teams landing there which were successful as well. Unsurprisingly, Big Hills have been good this season because if you pull the zone there, you're basically in the best spot. Now if we just narrow this down to where the winners landed, you can see that Sinister Strip obviously was very good. You had Peterbot and Poyo land there from NA Central, and then Mini Pio and Fukun land there also from Asia. This drop spot has the Sprite Head, which you can still do the overdrive grenade effect from to just fly further. And Peterbot and Poyo use this a lot to W key all of the teams around them. So similar to kind of Shark and Teeny, how they grabbed loot and then went to W keyed people, Peterbot and Poyo did a very similar strat. They can also just base on the head, so also some very good surge positions built in too. Now you do have a chance of getting the mythic boots from the vault down below, but funnily enough, they left them behind as it's kind of hard to carry these in duos. It honestly just makes more sense for both players to carry the overdrive grenades instead. So in duos, basically no one's taking the boots, including the mythic, which is crazy because it has infinite uses. Now, EU is won by Thomas and Focus from Heatwave Harbor, and I think this is a very underrated drop spot. I think it might be by far one of the best. By doing the duck race, there's a chance that you can get the mythic pump. However, if you don't get the mythic pump, you still get a gold pump. So you're basically guaranteed a banginator in your inventory. However, there's also chances that bosses can spawn nearby. In the first game, for example, the boss with the Maven spawned, so they had 2 mythic shotguns in their inventory. Kind of crazy that they only got 2 eliminations when they both had mythic shotguns this game. Not hating or anything, but come on. What are we doing here? Obviously, the best strat this year has been the Sky and Scroll strat, where they played on the hill in Major Number 1. And this drop spot has a massive hill right next to it that has all of the same characteristics that Sky and Scroll had. So basically, if they want, they can play that exact same strategy that has proven to be successful so far by going on the hill, playing in Storm after the second zone, and then rotating into Deadshad Partials. That was kind of what Thomas and Focus were already doing in the previous seasons already, but now they actually have a much better position to do it from. They also have some nice little small tech here where they can chop down buildings to loot faster. And there was this one really nice moment where they noticed they were getting lurked on, but they didn't know where the team was. So they bought a pulse scanner from one of the vending machines for 500 gold, chucked it on the roof, and then got into the fight where they didn't end up actually killing them or whatnot. But it's a good way to try and find players who are in your drop spot if you don't know where they are and you know you're being lurked on. And 500 gold is relatively easy to come across if you're landing in a major POI. And I think the last notable winning drop spot here is Frosted Flats, which is won by Phoenix and Retro. Now, Sky and Scroll are also trying to land here in EU, so this drop spot is obviously very good and has a lot of the same characteristics we talked about with the other drop spots so far, that it's kind of close to the middle of the map, so you're not going to get into the storm early, so you have a lot of options to rotate. It also has insane amounts of gold in here. There's a ton of the beds that drop between 500 to 1500 gold. So you'll notice in this game, they can buy like 3 chug jugs. They both drop purple pumps, capped ammo, extra bigs, and medkits to play Storm here from the Surge base here. So absolutely insane gold here. But the main trend from most of the best drop spots we've seen is, again, that most of them are not right at the edge of the map, because it gives you more options to rotate from. Of course, a big change in Season 3 is, of course, the fact that the new dropping mechanics are now also in competitive rather than just being in pubs. And this has actually changed how pros drop a lot. Now, if you've been struggling with this and continually getting out-dropped, I've found a couple of rules that work relatively well. I will qualify, I am not a drop map maker, and I've done about, I don't know, 30 minutes of research into this, so there's definitely a lot more tips and tricks and ways you can do this, but I found a pretty good way that you can actually just apply this to almost any single drop. Now, in far zones, jumping out of the bus is somewhat similar. You basically want to wait until you're not entirely at a 90-degree angle, just slightly before that, This will give you roughly the best glide. You also don't need to continually spam your gliders over and over again. You can literally just glide all of the way whilst holding your glider out because you move forward at the same speed as you would if you were traveling downwards. So there's not actually a massive benefit to just spamming your glider and continually flying. Now, closer bus paths are a little bit more tricky, so I looked at this game where Sky and Scroll out-drop Vidil and Zhu, and I want to figure out where they actually drop. So if you look at how Sky ends up jumping here, he jumps at the bus roughly 225 meters away from the actual item that he wants to land on, and then the point at which he ends up deploying his glider is 63 meters away. Now, importantly, he also deploys over a hill. So notice, historically, you'd want to land on the lowest point possible. That isn't necessarily true anymore. Now, once you've hit a point on the floor and you start to pull out your glider, there's an animation that plays before you can cut it. So by deploying on a hill, a building, or a tree, you actually are able to cut your glider slightly faster and get to the weapon first. Now, I don't know if this is 100% correct. Again, this is just in my own testing and what I've seen from some of the pros. Now, assuming I want to land here on Shaken Sanctuary, if I draw a line that goes 63 meters away, that's 64, but it's close enough, and then another line from here, which is 225 meters away, as you can see here, all I need to do then is draw a circle and another circle to match that. Now you have a very rough drop map, which shows you where you should jump out of the bus and where you can deploy. Importantly though, this little map I've drawn doesn't count for any high points, so of course you might want to adjust to where you're actually deploying your glider to ensure you land. Now, I tested my crappy little drop map here in a few ranked games, and I did get the best drop every single time, despite me failing. Now, the main skill of dropping right now is really just cutting your cord at the perfect time to ensure you don't get any fall damage, and the only way to get good at that is really to practice it, so definitely worth doing. Our next important thing to talk about is which weapons and what is the kind of meta. I opened the first game from the Divisional Cup here, and I went to the 7th zone, and I counted every single item the players were carrying. Yes, it took a while. Yes, it was boring. And guess how many people were carrying the 7 sliders? That was one person. One person out of 51. And he didn't last very long. So, of course, not the meta. Do you know how players were carrying the overdrive grenade? That was 48. On the same note, unsurprisingly, extending focus shotgun and the Maven shotgun basically had minimal uses, only 3 players carrying these each. In terms of assault rifles, the surgical burst AR was the highest usage with 11 players carrying it, whereas 7 had the Warforged and then 4 had the Chaos Exploder. And then of course, most players are running the higher fire rate guns like the pistol and the Stinger SMG. And then looking at the overall stats on Assyrian, shout out to them, you can see Ranger Pistol, most damage to players, Striker Pump, second most, Surgical Burst, which seems to be the weapon that most players are using for Surge, Warforged, Stinger, Chaos Exploder, and of course, players are going to take Stinger and Ranger into endgame as they have the higher fire rate. You can deal more damage, get more eliminations. Now, it's moments like this in endgame why you want such a high fire rate weapon, where they can just instantly chop out the team next to them, get a free elim, and then unfortunately Cammy also gets stuck, so they managed to get 2 free elims out of it. I mean, look at how they even win this match. The damage per second on this weapon is just so unbelievably high. The Vico could down below, he gets hit by a pump, so he flies up, minimum pump, and then just insta deletes Thomas. Now, the keen-eyed of you may have noticed that a lot of the top teams are fighting early into the game, looting a bit, leaving the POI, fighting, coming back in, and continuing to loot. And that is because in Season 3, W keying as a strategy is way more viable. If you look at the top 5 from both EU and NA and compare it to last season's Divisional Cups, you'll notice that the average eliminations this week was higher than any of the Divisional Cup finals last season. Now, it's only marginally higher. This was also the only week where both EU and NA had a team with over 4 eliminations in the top 5. Now, this is because in Season 3, W keying and fighting has just been buffed. Last season, with the Flowberry Mist Grenade, if you got hit for 100 damage, 50 damage from a distance, or by a team lurking, you could just throw it down and just hold your walls and defensively box fight whilst you passively healed up. Add on to this the fact that the Chaos Reloader was in the meta and you basically have a guaranteed 150 pump back on someone who's aggressively box fighting you. This meant that last season, actually W keying and being aggressive was a very risky strategy. However, now with the removal of both of these, if you manage to get 100 damage tag, 50, even 150 onto another player, it's really difficult for them to defensively box fight. So in Season 3, players who are aggressive and are really good at putting pressure on another team, like Peterbot and Poyo, unsurprisingly, have been massively buffed by this new meta. And if you watch some of the ways that Pete and Poyo were playing their fights earlier into this game, you know, the fire rate of these weapons kind of comes in a little handy here. You can see they just jump straight in, just spray, spray, spray. Diego's now dead. Not a single shotgun, not a single pickaxe. You're just running in with the stingers. And then around 10 seconds later, he does the exact same thing. Just slides in, runs through the wall. Kraze is weak, and he just goes insta down. Almost from a very nice piece also too onto Kingling there. And of course, Pete chases King down and gets a third elimination in a matter of seconds. And of course, shortly after that, they start to W key over to a team over to the west. This is finals, remember. This is against the best players on the region, and they're just full W keying. Poyo hits the nade, gets a pump, and then just gets on the wall, sprays straight away, and kills Milk. And he spots that Urko is jumping away, so he does the same thing. Hits a nade, flies overhead, little bit of a spray to jump straight in. Look at the way he's playing, just spray, 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 pumps the wall, runs in, and then kills him as well. Now, this here is a situation that many players would die in. However, not for Poyo. Poyo just sprays through, gets the max damage with the pump off, runs through underneath. A little bit of server lag, unfortunately. Does the side jump, hits the max. Lovely. So this should show you how those high fire rate weapons are just dominating the meta right now. I'm over here now. Like the video if you liked the video. Like the video if you didn't like the video. And of course, subscribe because I'm almost at 1 million. And your help would be very much so appreciated. Bye.